Hey traders, Joseph here from Eightcap. Welcome to this week's Trade Zone weekly wrap. So it hasn't been the most exciting week so far. We've seen a couple breaks lower late in the week, but before that really got going, as we can see on the dollar here, it's been pretty choppy and flat. Risk currencies today have been moving lower, so we can see a break here. But between Monday and yesterday, really, we've seen a few moves down and a few false starts higher, which have sort of been capped now. The euro did at least have a bit of a crack, but again, we're just seeing this real range pattern into the end of the week. Same with the pound. Even with inflation in the UK beating expectations to the upside, the pound hasn't really seen any strong movement. So CPI came in at 10.1%, that was above the 9.8 that was expected, and the dollar, which looked to sort of have a couple of tries at breaking higher, hasn't been able to hold that move. We did look at this pattern earlier in the week as a possibility we could see a inverse head and shoulders, but at the moment this range is starting to cancel that out. We'll continue to keep an eye on it, but for now doesn't really look like that pattern is going to play out, and there's a pretty decent little amount of resistance here starting to pick up on the short term, and it's on the index, it's around 102 even. Now oil was another market that did see some movement this week, and it was the downside, so we will get onto cryptos as well. They're quite similar to oil. We've seen this real strong move lower. Yesterday we saw further falls, and it's interesting because after this big move higher, after the production cut that surprised the market, buyers made a real good attempt. We saw a break above this resistance, which we hadn't seen cleared, since prices fell down and formed that resistance level back in, late 2022, and we did see a break higher, but things have changed pretty quickly, and we've seen that move back lower. So this could be on a demand worries, the global economy, and just with future demand, and how if those production cuts are going to offset worries around demand for crude. So it's an interesting situation. We'll see if it does fill the gap, and if buyers can come back in, but it looks really like this whole thing just ran out of puff, and it was quite a surprise after that real firm move up that we did see last week. Now, before we get into stock indices, gold we were watching yesterday is still stuck in this range. We were hoping that we'd see a move higher. We did see an attempt by buyers to break out above the short-term resistance at the 205. It's really 206 to 2010. Now, sorry about my nose. So we were wondering if the rejection here, this trend here, would feed some more demand and push higher, and the dollar didn't really do anything really to stop gold yesterday. We saw a move lower on the dollar, but even though we did see that, it just looks to have run out of juice, and we've seen a new hold in this range. So we'll continue to watch this range, and if we do see a break lower, or if we do see a break higher, but at the moment it's definitely range bound, and traders should be giving it some time to work itself out, and that's after we had that test right back up into levels not seen since early 2022, followed by that quick reversal. But there also has been a lot of rejection for two sellers from buyers anywhere below that 1990 point. We can just see these tails here that buyers are ready to jump back in the market anytime we do see a move below that area. So yeah, a little bit of a snoozy week on a few markets to say it. So some stock indices, we've mainly seen selling on stock indices. We've had the European indexes had a couple of moves higher, but then we saw that fall yesterday, and the CAC continued to push higher, as with the DAX. We saw a couple of new monthly highs set up, but there is a bit of a consolidation at the moment as well. And US indexes, so we did see a 2-day decline now on the US 30, and there's some decent resistance at 34,040. And on the S&P, despite some decent earnings coming out on the S&P, and we do see this key resistance still remaining in play here at 41.59.12. So that area needs to be beaten. We're not saying it's really a decline yet, but it's being held up pretty firmly by that level of resistance, and it needs to be beaten before we can really start to look at if this trend is going to continue higher. And on the NDX 100, which is the Nasdaq, it's a similar story. We had a move up that tested that previous close back on this bar, but we've seen just a lot of resistance setting in from 13,127, and we've seen those two declines now. But there is still a bit of demand anywhere below that 12,983 area, and then again there's a bit of support down at 12,853 as well. So that is a bit flimsy at the moment. It's really just tails, so we'll see if that can hold or if we do see another move lower. But this resistance will have to be beaten, and it looks quite boxy at the moment and pretty messy. So all around there looks like to be a fair bit of indecision on US indices at this point in time. And just moving on, before we touch on cryptos, we have seen a fair bit of demand for the yen today. So can't really see anything jumping out in the news unless I've missed it, but we are seeing a lot of demand for the yen and a fair bit of selling, especially the Aussie at the moment. It's trading 0.83% lower. It's also trading the lowest as well against the dollar at 0.49% lower, and the other majors as well, the euro and the pound, are all tracking lower. So there's a bit of resistance here on the euro yen. It's had a very nice run up, but we've now seen a 2-day decline. There was a nice, nice breakout once it cleared this resistance. There was that really nice push higher, but resistance is definitely set now at 147.58. So we've had two touches there, and then today's decline. So we want to see what happens here if this is a retracement, and if we do see a new move back up to test this area and a break to continue this trend on. And with the pound to the yen, it's a similar story, but less resistance. It's more just a follow with general overall market momentum, and we're seeing those 2 days of declines as well. The dollar yen, the dollar's been pretty mixed with this little false break that really didn't eventuate, and there's a fair bit of resistance there from 135.06 down to 134.73. But again, we have this small patchy trend in play. There's still a lot of higher lows. We'll just have to see if sellers can start a decent move to sort of break this momentum here. But overall, we'll need to see a break at this area by buyers to really signal that this trend will continue higher. Now, just we'll touch on some of the cryptos as well. Now, there was a real shift in momentum, so it was quite interesting. So we saw this bar here on Bitcoin really zoom in. It had all the hallmarks of an engulfing bar. It failed dramatically. There was a real round of profit selling midweek. That turned into another solid day of selling yesterday. It's moved all the way back down to the 28 handle at the moment. So we kind of were looking at this bar here maybe to prop up and get some buying going, but once again there was this too much resistance and selling pressure at 3,500 resistance, and then for whatever reason, if it was profit taking gone wrong or just a bit of a move out of risk, we've seen a couple of declines, and we'll continue to watch that. So this trend, you can't really argue with it. It's a very firm trend, even though we have come back down into this area now. So it's starting to interlope, which isn't a good sign for seeing healthy, solid running upswings with higher lows. We still are seeing this as still an uptrend, and we'll continue. I'm just going to continue to give it more time to see if we can see a new point of support come in, and then with a new higher low, and if we can see if we can get back up to test this resistance. But for now, we really want to see this level here beaten at 3,500, just to show the buyers have control and they're going to push on higher and maybe try and get back up to test that 31 to the high 31 area. So Ethereum as well. Similar story. We had a fair bit of rejection and resistance here at 21.20, and we had that strong move lower, which really selling really took off. I think it was on a Wednesday when we had this real key move down. It really came out of nowhere as well. It was in the London session, so things were looking okay until that European session, and then we just saw basically the tap turn on and off it went. So again, it looks a little bit less junky than Bitcoin at the moment, but we'll see if buyers can start to try and form a bit of a floor, and we'll look to see if this current trend here will remain in play. It's still a nice, healthy looking trend, but we'll just have to see now if we can see some signs of a new continuation taking place. So that's some of the moves this week. A few markets to keep an eye on later. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on the yen and see if that selling is going to continue against risk currencies and the dollar, and buying will continue to the yen. The dollar CAD has had a pretty solid week, and it is also starting to form an inverse head and shoulders. So we can see that shoulder here, here's the head. So we have a pullback down to around there and a move back up to test that neckline and a break. Could be a sign that this trend could be under pressure and we could see a new move higher. But with the Canadian dollar falling on the back of oil, so it will come down to, as usual, just the health of oil and the dollar as well. So on to some of the news that we are waiting for to come out this afternoon. Due to the timing of this video, when you see it, this data may already have come out, but definitely things to keep an eye on this afternoon for Friday is the services and manufacturing PMI data that's coming out of Europe, the UK and the US. So the US will be the last. It's at 11:45 Australian Eastern Standard Time, 6:30 for the UK, and then from 5:15 we'll have the French, 5:30 the German, then the actual EU data itself, followed by the UK data, then the US data. So into next week, we'll have a quick look at some of the keys coming next week. So we have a bank holiday for Anzac Day in Australia and New Zealand on Tuesday, and then during the week we have CPI for Australia, which should be viewed with a bit of interest. CB consumer confidence out of the States as well on Wednesday, as well as the Australian CPI. We have advanced GDP and unemployment for the US, so advanced GDP is definitely one to have a look at as well out of the States. And we have the Bank of Japan Outlook Report, monetary policy statement, and their policy rate, which is expected to remain the same at minus 0.1%. But I think it'll be interesting to hear some of the comments from the governor of Bank of Japan just about their direction and how they see things going at the moment. So German prelim CPI is coming out as well on Friday, and then we have to end the day the core PCE price index out of the States and the employment cost index on the quarter by quarter, so plus Canadian GDP. So a few things to come out next week. One of the interesting things locally, I probably have spoken a little bit too much about interest rates here and the RBA. So with CPI coming out next week, it'd be interesting to see that figure. We did have stronger employment data the previous week, and there was a bit of a change up this week with the RBA, and the RBA actually may be losing its power to set interest rates, and it looks like it's going to be moved over to a panel. So a similar process to the Bank of England basically. So that is one of the interesting developments so far locally this week. But overall, we'll see if we get some more movements, if we're going to see more downside from stocks, and if gold will be able to hold that support or maybe even try and push higher again. And oil as well is quite interesting at the moment, on top of the rally we're seeing today in the JPY. So we'll just finish on oil, and we are wondering now if we're going to see that gap fill. And there is basically 2% left for price to go down, which is not overly that much for oil to move in a day. So we hope you enjoyed today's update. Thank you very much for your time. We wish you a fantastic weekend. Thanks again, and good trading for the rest of the day, and bye for now.